it's so interesting what we're talking about. And this is a question that I really wanted to ask you, because the more I read about your work, the more I researched it, the more I thought, is free will an illusion? Are we just completely determined by our genetics? I like to think I've got free will, but you just go, a lot of the stuff I've done, is that just my genes?
Well, the free will issue is a very big issue philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
But say just, and like Sam Harris and people are saying no such thing as free will. It's all determined, but this is a rabbit hole in a way. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. But from a simple genetic point of view, I would say it's almost the opposite. Like now that we have, with the DNA revolution, we have these polygenic scores, so I can predict genetic risk from birth. So in my book, I present the world's first profile of these genetic risk scores for things like obesity, for example, or schizophrenia. And my highest risk score was for obesity. And so people might be surprised to learn that body weight, obesity is nothing more than high body weight. It isn't like a disease or a disorder. It's a perfectly continuous distribution. So by having a high, well, first people might be surprised to learn how heritable individual differences in weight are. Mm-hmm. When we've done surveys, people think height, highly heritable. Mm-hmm. Weight, nah, it's just free will. People who have problems with their weight, they just need to get a grip, pull up their socks, But it turns out it's about 60% heritable, meaning the differences between people and their body weight, 60% of the differences are due to inherited DNA differences. So where this comes back to your question is, I have this high, like I'm at the 94th percentile of this genetic risk, but I'm at the only 70th percentile of actual body weight. Mm-hmm. That still gives me a BMI near on the cusp of obesity, really.
But you're doing quite well given your genetic inheritance.
Well, that's it. And instead of me giving up and saying, I'm destined to be a genetic fatty, I can't do anything about it, I find for that and for many other genetic risks, like heart disease or whatever, it actually motivates you to do better. So I know that my weight isn't a matter of, every year. It's invidious. I put a few pounds on every year, but the problem is they don't go away. And so by recognizing I'm in this kind of battle of the bulge, it's a lifelong battle. And so what I do is I arrange my environment. I just can't have junk food in the house. With the best of intentions, come home late one night and those crisps start talking to you. Oh, just one crisp, and then the whole bag's gone. And you could say I could have the self-control, but life, you live it on the fly, and things happen, and sometimes you lose that. And other people wouldn't have that sort of those crisps they could leave on the shelf. I just can't have them in the house. So I've learned that I can't have biscuits in the house and stuff like that. And I still have to struggle with it, but it helps me to know I've got this genetic propensity for putting on weight. So I think weight is a good example of what you're talking about. Just because it's heritable doesn't mean there's nothing you can do about it. And no trait is 100% heritable. Body weight is, at the higher level is 60%. Most traits are about 50% heritable. Personality about 40%. So there's still a lot of non-genetic influence. But as I said, those influences are largely chance and idiosyncratic. But you can take advantage of those probably and say, I'm going to work hard to keep my weight down. I could definitely work harder at it, but I'm only willing to give that so much energy in my life. Plus, I love food, and so
that was a strong yes there.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. So we've been talking about the inheritability of obesity, and as a man who struggles with his weight, thank you for telling me it's not my fault. I really appreciate that.
We're going to have to up the fat shaming, mate.
Yeah. But what about addiction?
Well, one rule sort of is after 50 years of research is everything's heritable, but nothing's 100% heritable. So the work on addiction suggests it's moderately heritable, in general about 40% heritable. And people are trying to get genetic DNA predictors. We call them polygenic scores because these genetic influences aren't due to a handful. They're not due to one gene or a handful of genes. They're due to thousands of genes with very tiny effects. And you can put them together in what we call a multiple genic score to predict behavior like alcoholism. And so they're not as strong as the predictors we have for, say, cognitive ability.